And it's back. So here we start again on page 74. Again, her sister's tone sounded imbued with faint praise, but whatever. Iris was like that. She was cautious, not one to show great outward display of, well, much of anything. In Rose's opinion, her sister was one of the most delightful people in the world, but she did her best to keep that information a secret that could only be given to a privileged few. Iris was just reserved. It was how she was. It wasn't because she was snobby or anything like that. Iris had been forced to grow up far too early. Again, a sliver of guilt worked its way between Rose's ribs and made it difficult to breathe. Pansy was even more even-tempered than Rose, but Pansy was just stubborn and tough and couldn't have faded into the background if she had made an effort. Rose had made a bad habit of speaking and acting before she thought, and found that she could rather get enjoyed making a comment nobody else would. It seemed like a little bit of whisk and vinegar ran in the family. It made Rose wonder how much Iris had pushed down so that she could be the mature one, the one that took care of things. "Color me shocked," Ryder said. "I figured you'd storm out of the bar and tell Rose where to shove it." "I wouldn't do that," Iris said. She wouldn't, that was the thing. Rose would. Pansy would. Ryder would. Iris wouldn't. But surely Iris wouldn't let Rose run over her either. They were her sisters, and Iris could tell her whatever she needed to anyway. She didn't have to send the recipe to him. "Elliot," Emmett said from his end of the table, "is he that guy that does the water stuff? He came to the school a few weeks ago to install a new system. I don't know, something about expanding and needing more. I quit paying attention." Emmett went to school on the Dalton ranch. The Dalton were the West family. His other set of half-siblings, apparently Hank Dalton, had a lot of illegitimate children littered around the country. West was one of them, and had only connected with his family a year or so earlier, but it had all worked out in the end, since his half-brother Gabe had started a school for troubled youth, and his half-brother from the other side, Emmett, was a little bit of troubled youth. "Yes," Rose confirmed, "that's him." Emmett snorted. "Okay." West elbowed him. "Sorry," the kid said. "Can we stop talking about it now?" Iris said. "I would rather much plan the parade. We only have a couple of weeks." So they discussed the parade business, and it wasn't until after dinner was finished and Rose had gone up to bed that she realized that Logan, who had jumped in and made sure she had something to do, was that she was even excited about. That made her think of his eyes again, his eyes, and all his things that he said to her earlier. She didn't even want to lose this bet. She just considered losing the bet that had made her feel wrong. She stripped off her clothes and walked into the bathroom and then connected to her room, and turning on the shower. She'd never been half so grateful to wash the day off her body, and she couldn't quite say why, except there was this general strange electrical current running beneath her skin, and she couldn't figure out the source. So she did the best thing she could do to think of, and she didn't think about it at all. Got herself clean, went back to bed, and her dreams, though, were full of blue. She chose not to remember them when she woke up. 74, 75, 76... Here's 77 and 78, hopefully. Not only had he gotten himself roped into this whole parade thing, but thanks to the fact that he hadn't been able to stop himself from jumping in and saving Rose from disappointment, he also had to attend a planning meeting. He could think of nothing else nothing he would like less. Well, at this point, he could think of a few things. It had been a hell of a week. When he pulled into the parking lot at Community Center, all he could think was that he was going to continue to be hell of a week. He was allergic to stuff like this, small-town politics and everything that went with them. People fighting to climb the social ladder of Gold Valley, which was a step-ladder if he was being generous. And in Christmas it was the potluck of hell. And those people would collide with people like Pansy, who actually did things for the community and other reasons than their own self-aggrandizement, and all he would get was sad, off-brand chocolate sandwich cookies and watered-down punch for the effort. He pushed the door to modest half open, found all the folding chairs occupied already. He moved across the white-gray linoleum, standing toward the back. The door opened not long after, and Rose scurried in. She looked around and came to the same conclusion he did, and that was where there was nowhere to sit, and then her eyes connected with his. That was 76, 77, here's 78. He was used to the tightening in his gut when she looked at him, but he had to be. After the dance, the bet, the idiot things he said to her about all she didn't know, it was sharper now, keener, which was now all he needed, considering it had been sharp enough before. She waved at him, then tiptoed over to the table at the back and poured 2 cups of punch while the woman that he didn't recognize continued to talk. She joined against the back wall, handing him some punch. He lifted it in mock salute, and she smiled. They'd spent the whole day together out on the field. There was just something about her out of context sometimes. Hell, there was something about her in context. He couldn't even pretend otherwise. Overall, the meeting was pretty boring, and she didn't even pertain to them. Then it was time for Barbara to take the floor. We have a few new submissions for space after the Christmas parade. She looked around the room, and it made him feel like he was in trouble. She reminded him of a particularly laser-focused teacher he once had who has always acted like he was up to no good. In fairness, he had been, but he wasn't now. Neither was he a kid. The effect was still the same. Including, she continued, a stall with the baking activities, which gives me concerns regarding legality and the health department, a blacksmith demonstrations, which could definitely be a fire hazard, and jewelry making, all of a bit pointed, wherever Pansy had said about Barbara being fine with her being in her new position. He had to wonder if it was true. I feel like all of these needs need to come under further review, she said. We can't just go making changes to format simply because someone is in a new position and they are looking to leave their stamp on things. He could feel Rose bristlings beside him. Don't do anything, he said, and his voice was low. You know Pansy can handle herself. I will open the floor for discussion, Barbara said. I don't think there will be any more of a problem with my sister's booth than there will be with a general bake sale table, Pansy said. If that helps with your concerns there. I have a food handler's card. That bit of information came from Iris, and while it wasn't a shock to anyone in the room, considering it wasn't a particularly huge revelation, it was definitely a surprise to him. And he could tell by the way Rose's body jolted it was a surprise to her, too. Well, Barbara said, that is something to consider, though we are all going to have to look at the cleanliness of the preparation. We need a station so that children can wash their hands. We can figure all that out, Pansy said, keeping her voice even. The way that Barbara moved on after that made Logan wonder if it actually wasn't personal, if the woman was just a stickler and that there was no exceptions made at all, and every new idea was coming under scrutiny, no matter who it came from. Now the blacksmithing booth, she said, and I don't know about it. It seems like a serious safety hazard, and we're definitely going to have to clear it with our insurance. That was 78, 79, and here comes 80. That was a fair point. He could tell by the tension in Rose's posture that she did not agree. As for the jewelry, she said, we might have too much competition with the local shops, and we need to be very, very careful not to step on any toes of people who are grandfathered in the booths. I don't mind, said Dana, the woman who owned the Willow Creek, where most of the town's jewelry was sold. I sell some of Sammy's designs in my store, and any demonstration she does could only benefit me. It will be brought under advisement, Barbara said, clearly unmoved. And that was when he felt Rose reach out the end of her tether. What, I wonder, she said, as if you're shooting down other people's ideas so that no one will realize you don't have any. Barbara's face went red. Well, she sputtered. She was speechless, which was the first time anyone in the room had seen it. A nervous giggle swept through the crowd. I'm just saying, you know what they say, those who can't do plan, or something like that. For the first time ever, Barbara Niedermeyer didn't seem to have anything to say, and in fact she said nothing else. She simply walked down from her position into the front of the room and took a seat. An uncomfortable wave went through the room, and Dana got up and started managing the meeting, speaking quickly, relaying the rest of the information as fast as possible. Logan looked over at Rose, who was leaning against the back wall. Her arms were crossed, and her expression was defiant. As soon as the meeting was over and the people began to disperse, he grabbed her by the arm and dragged her out the back door. What the hell was that? She's insufferable, Rose said. I'm sick of her taking shots at my family, and Emmett is included in my family, and I have a bad taste in my mouth from that already. She's one of those people, he said. She means well, but she can't be flexible. She doesn't have friends. She doesn't have a family support system the way you do. She crossed her arms and looked up at him like he betrayed everything they were. So I'm supposed to feel sorry for her? She was being not as good as she could be, or not as good as he gave her credit for anyway. To him, she was bright and irrepressible, but never mean. And Barbara might be difficult, but in the end she was a woman abandoned by a husband whose son had been abandoned by her too, and Logan hated that. It scraped against her all of his own feelings about his mother, and no, Barbara wasn't like his mother, not even close, but his mom had been judged and she felt ostracated, and maybe Barbara was just reacting to what she thought the town might give her back if she didn't lead with judgment of her own. He knew that it looked like what it looked like when women left her. He knew what it looked like when were left hurt and vulnerable, victims of choices men made and scorned more than ones that abandoned them ever would be. He thought Rose would have had compassion to understand too. Yes, he said, you should. She doesn't have anyone. 80, 81, and here's 82. You should give her some level of sympathy, a little bit of grace, damn it. Suddenly you're the expert on how to treat people? At least in the room full of people, you should have had the good sense to be kind to somebody who isn't working with as much as you are. Her husband is gone. He left her while their son spiraled into addiction. And you know that. So does everyone in that room. Doing things for the town is all she's got done. That's all she's got. Badly done, Rose. He didn't know why it bothered him so much, didn't know why everything about her getting under his skin the way that it was now, but he couldn't stand there to look at her, not at this moment, so he turned and walked away, leaving her there with no further explanation. Rose felt wounded, scraped, raw, and even worse, guilty. It wasn't fair. Barbara Niedermeyer had deserved that, and what she had done wasn't that mean. She needed to be taken down a peg or two, and Rose had done it. His face, his disapproval, it made her chest burn with humiliation. Logan was often, well, he was bossy, like an older brother. He gave her a bad time. He told her she didn't know what she was doing or thinking, and that way an older sibling with superiority complex might. But this was different. This wasn't him looking at her like a kid with claiming greater experience. He wasn't pretending to be a long-suffering. He wasn't picking on her just to irritate her. He looked at her like it was disappointment and anger all in one somehow. It seemed to take her down a wall between them. On his side, he was the protector. On her side, she was the impetuous one, the one that pushed and cajoled him reluctantly, made him smile. That look, it had made something else. It burned her down in her soul. She pushed it away because anger was easier. How dare he treat her like this? He wasn't perfect. He might think he was all high and mighty and certain of attraction and teeth. He didn't even know everything, and he didn't get to tell her how to behave. When she got into her car with Iris, she was still fuming, and of course Logan had taken off immediately after scolding her like she was a child. He was such an absolute butt. "Are you all right?" Iris asked. "No," she muttered. "I don't remember you ever losing your temper like that before," she said softly, her words a gentle introduction to the subject, but Rose could sense that there was more emotion beneath her sister's words. "I always lose my temper," Rose said. "I'm plain spoken. I say it like it is. The fact that anybody was surprised by that today is not my problem." She gritted her teeth. "Are you going to lecture me too?" "Who else lectured you?" "Never mind," Rose said. She didn't want to talk about it. She didn't want to reflect on the impression of his fingers had left on her arm, and the way his eyes had burned into her, and as he read her the riot act. "Fine," Iris said. "Don't talk to me. Maybe you should talk to Logan." 82, 83. Hopefully, here comes 84. Her head whipped around. "What?" "Well, he's the one that usually you go to when you need to discuss something, and obviously something's going on with you." "Nothing is going on with me. It's too bad Elliot wasn't at that meeting." "Yes," Iris persisted, "something is going on with you. I can tell because you don't want to talk about it. You so profoundly don't want to talk about it that you changed the subject to Elliot. I'm almost tempted to think that the real reason you're trying to set me up with him is because you need distracting from something that concerns you." Rose sputtered, "I do not. Nothing is different with me. Nothing." Silence settled in the car. "Is that the problem?" Iris asked gently. "No," Rose said. "Why would that be a problem?" "It is for me sometimes. Nothing is different with me either, and that's hard. I'm so happy for Ryder and Sammy, and I'm happy for Pansy and West, but I'm a little sad for me." In the middle of her misery, Rose felt slightly validated because she'd known Iris wasn't happy. She knew it. "We've all been one thing for so long," Rose said softly. "It's shifting and like it's weird. Good, but weird." Iris agreed with yeah. Do you think it would, if you hadn't had to take care of me, yet your life would have been different?" Rose asked, the question sticking in her throat. "Our lives would have been different if that plane hadn't crashed," Iris said. "Us being there for each other wasn't the bad part. I was 14, and it felt like everything good in the whole world was gone when we lost Mom and Dad." "And the screen again." So, oh, bet we're back, thank God. So, page 85. But there you were, Rose. You were good. Don't feel bad about me taking care of you. I don't. Rose blinked back the tears. She swallowed hard, but her throat felt tight, and she couldn't maneuver around the lump that settled there. Just trust me, Rose said. I'm fine. The problem, Rose, Iris said, is that I'm not totally sure that you wouldn't know if you weren't. That dug underneath Rose's skin, and she decided to go ahead and be done with the conversation because there was really nowhere else for it to go. When she tumbled out of the car, Iris started walking toward the house, but Rose didn't want to go. She was too keyed up, and she needed to do something to clear her head. I'm going to the barn, she said. Maybe she would go for a ride, or maybe she would clean a stall, hope it that the little bit of dirty so that she had something to do. She was not looking for Logan. She wanted to avoid Logan. He was being an active jerk to her, and there was no reason for him to talk to her like that. What her sister had said about how he was the person she talked to stuck in her craw, especially now. Rose growled around the barn for a while, raking dirt that didn't even need to be raked, digging through shavings that were just fine. She tried not to even think of Logan. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, leaning against the shovel she was holding. The way he looked at her in those electric blue eyes. Badly done. 84 and 85. Here comes 86. She couldn't remember ever being scolded like that in her life. She was 23 years old, and he was scolding her like she was a child. It was what he always did. In fact, it was what he had been doing for a few weeks now, questioning everything she said, everything she did. Where did he get off? Where did he get off being right? The way he had been lately, he filled her with lectures, and then he would dance with her. And he disapproved of her in such a deep, horrible way tonight, like he was above reproach, like he was some beacon of kindness and goodness to the people in the community. Not that he was a bad guy. He wasn't. He was nice, and he'd always been nice to work with and be around, until recently. It was hard now, and she didn't know why. She didn't know why. Lately, talking to him was like walking through the woods, trying to work her way through a thicket full of thorns. That brought her right back. To sitting with him and eating sandwiches, to those clashing with hers as he said it. You're talking about someone being with you, Rose. Skin to skin. The memory made her throat dry and already pounding, her heart throb, and she pushed all that toward anger. He made everything strange and difficult. It was all his fault. All of it. She prowled to the machine shed and then started making her way down the line of outbuildings. It wasn't that she was looking for him. She was looking for something to do. And Ira's suggestion kept ringing in her ears. That Rose talk to Logan, so she should talk to him about this too. I don't need to. I don't need to. His opinion has nothing but annoying. Nothing. She saw his eyes again, not as they were when he was her friend, or even that moment when they come into the house the other night when everything felt sideways, but the way he looked at her today. It had been different. It had been different, and she didn't know why or how, but it had been. Some part of her needed to see him again, to know. She found herself pushing the door open to one of the barns that didn't commonly use, and the barn that housed the blacksmithing supplies. Somehow she had a feeling that he would be there, maybe related to the reason that they had gone to that meeting in the first place. It was hot in there. Of course it was, because he had forged the fire up. The contrast between the air inside and outside was enough to take her breath away. At least that's what she told herself. Because there he was, standing at the anvil, hammering, and he wasn't wearing a shirt. Of course not, because it was hot. It was hot. That kept playing over in her head over and over again, so very hot. He lifted his arm, and every muscle in his torso flexed and stretched before he brought that hammer down on a blazing metal that rested on the anvil. Sparks flew, a few of them hitting him right in the broad chest, but he didn't flinch. His jaw flinched at his expression intense. 86, 87, and 88. He lifted that hammer again, and this time her eye was drawn to his biceps, his powerful shoulders, the way every part of his body seemed to move in service to his powerful explosion of strength. They couldn't do a blacksmith demonstration at Christmas parade. It was a family event. There'd be children. This was not appropriate. It was Logan. Her chest flexed again, and her breathing froze. It just hurt. It was physically hurting. Her breath, her lungs, something about the way she had solidified there in a place, unable to move, unable to breathe. I have a bone to pick with you, she said, the words rushing out of her numb lips. She had no idea how she managed to even say that, especially because she had no breath. I'm sorry, what? He turned, giving her a full, broad view of his chest, smudged with soot and ash and dirt, and his chest hair, each and every muscle perfectly defined. He lifted the arm that was still holding the hammer, muscles straining as he wiped the sweat from his forehead. His eyes looked even brighter, surrounded by the dirt on his face there in the dark. She pushed past it, pushed past the tangle in her chest and her lungs, and went right at him. You heard me. You were unfair, and you were mean to me. You were treating me like a child, and it isn't fair. I'm not a child, and I'm not somebody that you can just lecture all the time. You don't think I know anything, she said, getting a good rant all built up in her chest. Oh, yes, she was ready to fight. She was ready to scream, good and loud, too. I have worked with you on this ranch for years, and I know just as much as you do about any of this work as we do here. What makes you think I don't know anything about life? I've caught calves. I've buried them. I lost my parents. I know what it feels like to lose things. She felt her tongue about to tip right over the edge of decency. She'd been pushing it all day, starting it with Barbara, and she was going further, worse now, and she did it anyway. I know what it feels like to grieve. Twice what you did. Don't you dare treat me like I don't know my feelings. Sparked, burned in the blue, and his anger was palatable force. Good, she wanted it. Be careful, Rose, he said with a voice of a growl. She expected him to go on to give her the fight she craved. He didn't. He just turned back to the anvil. Don't you dismiss me, she said. You don't have the right to dismiss me. He didn't look back at her. She was around. Then she saw an empty soda can on the floor. She picked it up and hurled it at him. It hit him on the shoulder. What the F, Rose? I said, don't dismiss me, she said. You're acting like a child. You are quite literally throwing a tantrum here while you tell me that you should be taken seriously. I think you even can't appreciate how ridiculous this is. See, even that. I'm the closest thing you have to a business partner, Logan, and suddenly you're acting like I'm 1,000 years younger than you. You are a decade younger than me, Rose, and the only reason you think you know everything is because you don't. This is page 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90 is where we're going to stop at tonight. You profoundly don't. The difference between you and me is that I know all the things that, the difference between you and me is that I know all the things I don't know. That's a contradiction. You can't know what you don't know. You can, and I do. I've had it with you, she said. I'm right about Elliot and Iris. Barbara Niedermeyer needed to be put in her place. She has no right to treat us that way just because she's resentful that Pansy has a position of power, and you know why she does it. The same reason that you're a jerk to me, because I'm a woman, because I'm young. I am not a jerk to you because you're a young and a woman. I'm a jerk to you because somebody has to be. Everybody else is a little overindulgent of you and your shenanigans. If I were Iris, I would have told you where to shove it. Well, hopefully you'll get an opportunity after all the stuff up with Elliot works out, because if then I'll get to set you up. You are not setting me up, little girl, not happening. Why not? You don't seem to be able to set yourself up. Did you ever think that maybe I'm making a choice? A choice to be alone? A choice to be a better person than I damn well want to be. The air cracked between them, hotter than the forge, louder than the pop of the sparks around him. She closed the space between them with an open palm, pressed her hand against his chest, and shoved him back. His skin felt scalded, and she ignored it. I deserve your respect. You want me to start treating you like an equal? You want me to start treating you like a woman? Let's see here. Okay, we'll go to page 96, because that's the end of this chapter. She took a step closer to him, something driving her that she couldn't name, something dangerous churning in her gut that she couldn't define. It enraged her because it fell into the line of everything he had just said, that there was something out there, a great mystery that she wasn't privy to, something that he knew that she would never know. You wouldn't know how. You still look at me and see a kid who still needs her shoes tied, but I'm a woman who can put her on her own damn cowgirl boots, and I don't need you to tell me how it is. He took a step towards her and another, and those blue eyes never leaving hers. It was almost like that moment in the hallway had been a taste of this, the thunder in the distance, and now here it was, all around her, the storm. She took a step back, and then another, until her shoulder blades hit a rough wood on the wall of the barn, until he was coming up to her, 6 foot tall, of large, angry man who could wield a mallet and with no effort, who could pick up a calf off the ground and effortlessly heft a bale of hay. And it didn't even scare her. Having all that strength right there, not in front of her, with even him full of rage, didn't scare her. No, it was something else that twisted inside her now, something else that made her stomach tight, and there was that big panic blank in her brain that she tried to figure out what it might be. You don't want that, he said. Trust me, you don't. And you do know why you need somebody to tell you what's happening. It's not because you're stupid, Rose. It's because you don't want to see the damn world around you. And I can understand why, because, yeah, I do know the grief that you know. And more, I didn't lose both my parents, but my dad is a son of a gun. Make no mistake about that. You think he's not in my life because I don't know who he is? I choose not to acknowledge the idiot. He's walking around alive and my mother's dead. You want to talk about grief? That's grief. Oh, I know all about not wanting to see the world for what it is. But you take denial to a whole new level. You think that you can believe something into existence, that if you say Elliot doesn't want you and he wants your sister, it will be true, but it's not. He was talking, saying so many things, but she couldn't get 'em all straight. His father, but he was so close and she still couldn't breathe. You don't know what it means to have a man want you, and no, I don't mean him. He's got a good little schoolboy crush on you because he doesn't know what it means to want a woman any more than you know what it means to want a man. But I know, Rose, I know. His stare was hard and hot as she felt it was pinning her right to the wall. I'm so confident you're going to lose our bet. I could give you lesson one in chemistry right now. She shivered and he kept talking. And if I were to teach you even half of what I know, you would burn and bend like a metal I was just pounding. You wouldn't survive it so strong, little girl. Until you get heated up, you don't even know where it begins and ends. He reached out then, and his rough fingertips made contact with her cheek. She shivered as he traced a line down the side of her cheek to her collarbone, where he dragged his thumb back and forth, just like he'd done on the dance floor. That touch, it wasn't just a touch. There were layers to it, more to it than she had realized. That was 90, 91, 92. 93. And she felt it. She didn't just feel it where he touched, but she felt it down deep, felt it in her stomach and her lungs as she fought it to drag in her breath, felt it between her legs. Logan's touch, the chemistry. She gasped as he pulled away and from him, putting as much distance between the two of them as possible. That's what I thought, he said. Why don't you run along and we can both forget this happened? You can go back to seeing life the way you want it. But when you have that to get reality checks, don't you dare get mad at me. Don't you dare get mad at me for telling you all the things that you refuse to see, Rose Daniels, because you want it that way. You want to keep running, and sometimes I just have to stop you from running off a cliff. She did run. She ran like he was the very devil chasing right after her. She ran like her life depended on it. She started walking when she approached the house. When she got to the porch, she walked up the steps slowly and pushed the door open. Her whole family was in there, dragging boxes at the closet and unpacking Christmas decorations. The one good thing about Christmas was it would ward off Logan like it was garlic and he was a vampire. But right now, she didn't feel like being in the middle of the circus either. She couldn't face this, not now. She couldn't deal with cheer, Christmas or otherwise. Couldn't deal with her family, especially not en masse. Not while everything inside of her just felt like it was bright with heat, just like a horseshoe, just like he said. 92, 93, 94, 95, and 96. Remember, we're stopping at 96. Here's 94. Except right now, she didn't feel like she was going to bend. She felt like she was going to break. Rose, Iris said, we're getting Christmas decorations out. I was thinking tomorrow we could go up to Caleb Dalton's place and cut that down our Christmas tree. That suggestion came from Pansy. I sure, she said. She ducked her head and moved through the room. I just have to bathroom. She ran upstairs as quickly as she could, her breath coming in harsh, uneven bursts. She flung the door open to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Horror twisted in her stomach. There was a dark smudge on her cheek, a trail down to her neck and her collarbone. She leaned in closer, drawing her shirt down, examining that path that his touch had taken, started to breathe hard and felt dizzy. She wasn't afraid of Logan. This wasn't fear. It couldn't be. He was the closest thing, not a brother. No, he wasn't. He wasn't now, and he never could be. She wasn't afraid. He wasn't fear that had her breath coming in short, harsh gaps. It wasn't fear that had made her heart race like this. It certainly wasn't fear that she had made her pulse echo between her thighs. Wasn't fear that had stopped her in the doorway and kept her staring at his muscles either. Logan Heath had turned her on. It was like a flash bomb had gone off in her stomach, disseminating everything and lightening it up at the same time. She'd never been turned on by a man in practice, in the theory, how sure. Handsome men who would grace movie screens and country artists who sang sort of songs and spoke of dark nights and intimacy she didn't quite understand. This was personal, it was real, and he had been close enough to touch, and he touched her. They were sharing the same air, and his eyes. Why had no other man ever gotten to her? Now it seemed important to know, and she couldn't even sort it out. Were there really no other men around that seemed attractive to her, or was this just something to do with him? The thought made her stomach pitch. Nothing about him felt familiar right now. Nothing about herself felt familiar. She had to forget that happened. She had to. He'd been proving a point, teaching her a lesson. He said so. He'd been trying to scare her like he had been trying to do the other day when they'd been having sandwiches and he said all those things about intimacy. It hadn't been to make her feel this. No, not for this. It couldn't have been. She turned on the sink, ran the cold water over her wrist, then she looked at the smudge on her cheek and took the wet finger scrubbing at it, then her neck, her collarbone, until it was gone. The evidence of all of that had happened. Except she left the bathroom, no longer bearing evidence of his touch, and feel that it was still there, sunk down deep beneath her skin, like it was still burning. She did her best to smile, her best to join the family in looking at the Christmas decorations. Go right back to ignoring the world, except she couldn't, because the things she ignored she had been unaware of. The things she ignored she really hadn't known about. She hadn't known about what she hadn't known. And now, because of his hands, because of that thumb, she did. And she didn't see how it was ever going to be okay again. That was 94, 95, 96. And we're stopping there for tonight. So stay tuned for more of this book tomorrow. I'm glad we got as much in as we did. I'll have to make a new stopping point for tomorrow night. Hope now to get some of the Christmas book in with you. So, well, that was a Christmas book, but more of a kid Christmas book. So stay tuned.